creating a culture of love. I need tools. I have my own mental messes. I have my own baggage. This happened, forgive, reach out, mend the bridge.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and honest, and I'm sorry that you've gone through this. But at the end of the day, this is okay. It's part of being a human, but we're not going to stay there.
Dr. Carolyn Leaf, thank you so much for joining us, coming into the studio. I'm excited to have this conversation. One, because am I still a new dad because he's 2 now? Is that still considered a new dad?
Absolutely. Well, Ruben, it's just great to meet you finally and to be in your stunning studio. You know, you've made such an impact on so many people, and you talk about something that is so close to my heart as a scientist, so love. So yes, so to answer your question, yes, of course you're a new dad. I think
Awesome.
my kids are in their 20s and one in their 30s, and I still feel like a new mom because every day there's something new that you learn.
Plus they've only been 20 or 30, and you've only been 20 or 30 at the same time as well, obviously.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So we're learning it together, right? Kids don't come with instructions.
No, I wish they did, but they don't.
I remember.
And also, you couldn't make all the instructions because every child, if you apply those instructions with that one, it doesn't work because they're so different.
Although, there are some books out there where people try to do the manual, and I stayed away from all of that. And I was afraid, and I realized we have a lot of instinct naturally, and it started just randomly kicking in.
That's great.
Because when they sent me home, like they walked my wife and I home from the hospital, made sure, I think there's a law, they had to make sure we knew how to strap them into the car seat, which is a great law to have. But then I like, bon voyage.
And that's it.
And I'm like, wait, are you serious? Like,
now you
we can go?
This, and you got to bath this little thing, and you got to make sure you don't drop it.
And I think I could have walked faster than how slow I was driving home. So, but here we are. He's 2 years old. He's thriving. And you've got this exciting new book coming out. And I think it's perfect timing, for me, for my family, for future families, and just the state of the world we're in, right?
Absolutely, totally. And this particular book is basically for children ages 2 through 10. So it's just like spot on for what you're needing right now.
Yeah, and the world is getting faster. The world is our attention span is shrinking. It's electronic. Like there's so many things that we now need to navigate with our children. And I'm just excited to figure that out because I need tools. I have my own mental messes. I have my own baggage from what my parents did, and God bless them, they did the best. It's not a dig at them. We all are doing the best with the tools that we have, and it's up to us to go seek out the new knowledge and take the responsibility. So that's where we're at today.
That's key. What you've just said, Ruben, is so key that, our parents were someone else's children. Yeah. And these baggage that's just going on through the generations. And we do, as you and I were chatting a bit before, we do look back and think, hey, I'm not going to do what my mom and dad did. And then we end up sometimes doing it, sometimes not doing it, improving on it, not improving on it. But at the same time, whatever, no matter how good our intentions are as parents, we're still going to impact our children because they're all so different, we're so different, and we're dealing with our own stuff. And that's actually okay. And what I always tell people is that just look at it in 2 ways. Honor your parents' baggage, which you actually did in the statement that you made. But at the same time, you have the right to honor the impact that the parenting and the nurturing and etc. that was good intention in hopefully most of the cases has had on you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the permission we need to give ourselves that, as parents, it's the guilt that will come. It maybe already has come. Parent guilt is a massive thing because we're trying so hard to do the best for our children, as we all know. But we need to deal with that because that's messy, and we need to allow ourselves to be messy in that parent guilt and then to learn from it. And at the same time, deal with our own impact, which comes into our messiness. And then also honor the fact that no matter what we do, that our children need to be able to be free to say, hey, what you did really did mess me around.
Yeah.
It did do this. And, I have those hard conversations with my own 4 children. From, periodically something will pop up and, you said this, you did that, and that came up. And it's a great opportunity for you to see the impact and for you to help heal the impact on their life and your own life. So it's an ongoing thing. So bottom line, I think the biggest statement that I always say to people that I think frees up people in this whole parenting game and life is it's okay to be a mess. It's okay to be a mess. Everyone's a mess, Ruben, and everyone is a bit crazy. and no one has a normal brain. And those are probably three of the most hopeful statements that I can say, because, and it's scientifically been shown. Yale brought out a study in 2018, I think it was, showing that we've got to stop this trying to study that this is a normal brain and this is what deviate sort of neurodivergence looks like, because it doesn't work like that. It's just not possible to do that, because every experience is changing our brain moment by moment, and each of us comes to the table with so much uniqueness. So with that kind of foundation of it's okay to be a mess, we're all different, we all battle. Obviously some people have more extreme experiences than others on a scale of 1 to 10, but at the end of the day, this is okay, it's part of being a human, but we're not going to stay there. We need to recognize the mess, and we need to learn to manage the mess. And that's why I talk about cleaning up the mental mess for ourselves, cleaning up the mental mess for our kids, helping them. That's what we need to do, and that's mind management, and that's how we can run life.
Well said. Thank you. It's okay to be a mess.
It's okay to be a mess. It's a
I
good
agree.
place to start.
I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to say it in the mirror.
It's okay to be a
And we're
mess.
not perfect. And there is guilt. You hear guilt in your parents, and I did this for you. I chose this for you. I'm like, do you realize that the statement says I did? Because as a child, I didn't ask
To be born.
to be born, exactly. I didn't ask for you to sacrifice or do that or make those choices, nor did I even have the wherewithal to realize what you were doing.
Exactly.
And then 20 years later, you're telling me you did it for me.
It's very unfair, isn't it?
And as a father now, and I said this growing up, when I moved out, I figured out like, that was you, this isn't me. I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to carry that guilt with me. But now as a father, it just reinforced this. My wife and I chose to have Remy.
Yeah.
We are choosing all the things we do for him
Exactly.
so that he can sprout his wings and do his thing, because he's his own person.
There you go.
And that was it. And he won't owe me anything.
That's it. That's exactly the philosophy. No child owes their parent anything. All we're supposed to be doing is operating in your favorite word, which is love. And love is not looking for payback. Love is just giving. And the opportunity to be a parent is such a privilege and such an honor, and such a, as you say, we must do the best we can to help them find themselves. And that's really important. So I'm so glad you raised that, because that can lead to, in itself, to a lot of, am I doing it right? And the whole helicopter parenting world we live in, and the whole immersion, as we were talking just before we started, of our social media, it's on everyone's lips. AI, social media, immersion, bullying 24/7.
Yeah.
You can't get away from things. It's a new generation. It's a new world. But every generation's been a new generation and a new world. So what I always also try and help people to sort of think of this differently. Every generation's tempted to say, this is worse than before. We're facing more than before.
Yeah.
But that's how they felt the previous generation too. So obviously there's things we did better in previous generations and things we did worse, and we learn and all that kind of stuff. But in essence, every generation's facing its challenges. So what we need to do is identify what we're currently dealing with, and then learn a key thing, which is manage the mess. And so a big part of my work for the last 38 years has been to try to understand how life impacts us, how it becomes part of our psychoneurobiology, our mind-brain-body network, how it impacts us and how we show up, and how we can actually, most of the time, see it's messy, but how can we tune into our wired for love nature to literally stand back and observe our mess and then manage that mess. And you were telling me a little bit about just before we started, we were chatting, and you were telling me about you've been through kind of a rough year so far, and had to face a few challenges and things, and just the balancing act of parenting. And maybe we can talk about that, because it'll be a great way to share these concepts, because I can say cleaning up the mental mess, and I'm going to show you some really cool science stuff. But if we can hang it on to your example, maybe.
I'll be the guinea pig. This is an open
Great
book,
stuff. I
and
love
we're
it.
going to learn by being vulnerable and open.
We're going to be raw, as you like
and
to say.
And I think let's be raw. So let's be specific with this last month. So my wife has shared it publicly, but my wife had surgery about 4 weeks ago. And she was supposed to be fine in 3 to 4 days, back up in action. I'm like, I can take on her contribution to the family, right? She does her role, I do my role. It works for both of us, right? We can't all do all things. So number one, God bless single parents that they're rock stars. I don't know how they do this. Kudos to them. But 3 days into that, she has a complication. 2 days after that, we're back in surgery.
So sorry.
That was like another week, so it's restarting. And let's just say, also imagine her mental mess going through all this. Like she's feeling helpless. The pain is excruciating, and all her stuff around, well, I can't hold Remy, or I can't this with Remy, or I can't that, I can't lift him, I can't cuddle him. Like, so she's going through her situation, but then there's me taking it all on and also thinking like, well, I can't really share my experience because like you're going through it even more. So that's a conflict, right? An internal conflict. How can I talk to my partner right now when she's physically getting manhandled more than what I am mentally with everything else? Yeah. So I'm trying to deal with that. And then a few days later, the next complication happens again. She has to go back under. Awful. And that happens on a day that I'm flying out to give a keynote in San Antonio. Oh, gosh. And on Sunday, she's like, yeah, so the doctor opened up the office, but it's fine. So I was giving a talk that morning, and God bless her, she didn't tell me. Like Monday, I get back Sunday, and she's like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going back in. Surgery again. So again, another surgery, another week. And this time, the pain before was excruciating, but this time her pain level was through the roof. It was almost like 24/7 sobbing.
Oh no, that's terrible.
I'm on the verge of total breakdown. If I look at her, I'm going to start crying. Like, I don't even know what to do. I'm trying to keep up with work, taking Remy to school in the morning, trying to fit in a little bit of my mental practice of working out and my walks in the morning, which kind of took a back seat.
Yeah.
And then I get to work finally. Oh, we're going to the doctor's every day. So it's drop him off, take her to the doctor, come back. Try to carve out as much work in a few hours, go pick up Remy. Then I'm like, okay, I'll work after I put him to bed. It's 9:45 by that time. Like, I'm done. I'm going to bed. There is nothing else happening. Yeah. So I'm at my wit's end. So this is the last month.
Wow.
So besides a little bit of breathing, like, I know I was angry and I'm having these conversations, but like, some people do that yearly. So I'm not saying here I'm a victim to this, but it was a rough month. How do situations like that happen? Because that won't be the last time we go through a challenge. But what are some of the tools? Like, I started looking at this that we can start practicing better. Besides what I know now, let me breathe a little. Let me try to put myself on timeout. Let me, have a moment. But besides that, what can we start doing? And then how can I also broach that with my wife in her situation? And also just calm each other, saying like, Remy's okay, right? Because that's a concern. How has his month? She still thinks like, well, I haven't been able to carry him in a month. So like, that's a heavy toll on her.
A lot of, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest. And I'm sorry that you've gone through this. It's like hectic. And as you say, it's not going to, you won't have the exact same scenario, but there will be other scenarios, and we know this is life. And we had a couple of things happen at the beginning of the year, so you've kind of and it's interesting how this can happen, where we suddenly get a whole lot of stuff and then things calm down for a while. Yeah. And it is life, so how do we deal with this? So we need to know how to manage our mind in the process. And as you say, the fact that you're sitting here today and you can talk about it and you seem fairly calm, it shows that you actually were quite successful through the process, that you're actually more resilient than what you even maybe thought as you're going through the process. But there is the toll. And I'm sure in the midst of it, you thought, oh my gosh, it's like, it's too much, dealing with pain and all those things. So there's various levels of trauma. This is trauma. Yeah. The trauma of the surgery, the threat of surgery, the fact that surgeries can go either way, the anesthesia, the trauma of surgery, the trauma of pain, the trauma that she's going through. So she's had her own individual trauma of dealing with that physical, and then worrying about her child, worrying about you seeing her. So there's so many levels of trauma here that we're dealing with. So all of these experiences that were happening, even in your son, because even though I know you've been great loving parents and you've done what you can, and you've been all open and honest and all that kind of thing with him, he's also experienced trauma, because his life is no different. Now mom's different, mommy's different, and dad's different, and things are just not quite as calm as they used to be. And a child doesn't have the words to express it, but they understand a lot more than what we realize, and they process a lot more and that kind of thing. So for sure, it's impacted him. Without saying anything negative, it has impacted him. It's a fact. Every experience that we have is being processed by our mind. Our mind is not our brain. Our brain is a physical organ that is a substrate that the mind uses in order for us to have a place to store what we're experiencing, and then there's this magical connection that happens between the psychological energy of the mind and this physical substrate of the brain that enables us to actually function, be humans, sitting, talking, being a parent, going through all this stuff. So the outward us communicating and living has, if we go backtrack, is actually coming from our mind. So our driving force of everything in life is mind. Psychologically, mind is our ability to think and feel and choose in response to the experiences of life. And we're doing this all day long while we're awake. At nighttime, our mind is sorting out what we've experienced during the day. Now, this is happening right from a certain point, like late on in the womb, all the way through to the age we're at today. Every single experience is grabbed by the psychology of the mind, the sort of psychological think, feel, choose. On a physics level, it's gravitational fields and electromagnetic light forces and all this fancy stuff. We actually have a biofield. When you're dead, you don't have that biofield. When you're dead, your brain doesn't do anything. Your heart doesn't pump, as we know. But when you're alive, all that's happening. So the mind, just to give you the sort of impact of the mind and the brain body, the mind is your life force on a sort of physics level that makes your heart beat, that makes your brain work, that makes your genes express, that makes your lungs help you breathe and all that stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
And that's so fascinating, but also sometimes we're like, get out of your head and into your heart. So how does that actually relate to like mind-heart connection?
Okay, so that's a brilliant question. So with the mind, this being this life force, it's got 3 levels. Our conscious level is what's awake when we're awake. So our conscious mind's very active now. We have another level called the subconscious, which is a bridge. It doesn't store. It's a portal. It transmits. Then we have our biggest part of us, our deep spiritual, heart, emotional. Not emotional is the wrong word, but the deepest, wisest spiritual part of us, and that's our non-conscious, N-O-N.
Would that like intuition and all that fall into that?
Intuition, wisdom, love. The core, its foundation is love. It works on the principles of love. Love is survival. It's all those. It encompasses pretty much everything that is our natural nature as humans. Empathy, kindness, etc. can almost be all collapsed under the word that is your favorite word in the world, which is love.
Yeah.
And so that's our non-conscious. So the non-conscious is this scientific concept for loveness, spirituality, heart, all that stuff. So when we say let's get out of our head and into our heart, what we're doing is we are not just looking at this conscious way, very sort of almost this sort of conscious, disconnected kind of way. We're connecting with our deep experiences. We're connecting with all the wisdom, meaning, all that stuff comes from the non-conscious. So our conscious mind is aware of what's going on, and it's choosing to focus, and it's helping us pay attention, and it's helping us it's the part that we use to make decisions and evaluate and kind of, but it's informed by the non-conscious. It's informed by, so when we operate and we don't listen to the non-conscious, which is kind of easy to do, we're going to be very messy. We're going to be very messy. We're going to be going on pathways that we have, neural networks that we have wired into the brain as physical tree-like structures. That's why I've got these analogies here. And we're going to have these gravitational fields in our mind. So we have certain habits that we develop, ways of reacting, ways of responding that come from trauma, that come from just habits that we've developed. And those, if they're good, great. Keep growing those. But sometimes they're not so great. They're coping mechanisms that served us in the moment but don't serve us in the long term. And that's very often our messy mind will go to the easiest path. And the brain just does what the mind tells it to do. So the well-worn path analogy that people use so often with neural networks and habits and things, there's a well-worn path versus the jungle kind of thing, or the well-worn path through the jungle. Our brain, because it conserves energy, and the mind, messy mind, also works around conserving energy, will just go to the easiest thing that's on tap. So we revert back into these sort of automatic behaviors that aren't always the best for us. They're intelligent, they have life, but they're not the best for us. They don't
it's like
have
defense mechanisms, being defensive.
Being defensive, being justification, getting irritated, beating on oneself, self-hatred, bad relationship with oneself, negative self-talk, getting mad, fighting with people about being a Democrat versus a Republican or whatever, a stupid thing, those kind of pathways. But if you actually tune into your heart, which is your non-conscious mind, then you're going to be much more effective at mind management. You're going to start managing your messy mind. So the messy mind just goes all over the place. It needs control. It's kind of like your pilot will fly badly without a co-pilot and without all the instructions and so on. So what we want to do is always train ourselves and our kids from as young as 2 to tune into the messages coming from the non-conscious. What is love really telling us? What does it look like? So as you've had an experience like you have had in this last month, each day that experience, as it started with the initial surgery, that would have been a little seed that was sown, and then it started all the detail of the surgery and the repeated surgery and the pain and the implications for your life as you described, were all details that were filling into the root part. And I'm going to hold up this wiry looking tree that is my little representation of a toxic thought.
Yeah.
Because in experience, these experiences that you've had this month are wired by your mind into the brain as a thought. So experiences, aka the surgery, you managing your son, etc., those are experiences that were wired by the psychology of your mind and the physics of your mind into the brain as these protein tree-like structures. The root part is the detail, the surgery, the trying to cope, the seeing your wife in pain, the repeated surgery, you having to go away, you're worrying about your son, trying to get him to school in time, trying to keep him calm, trying to get your work done. All of those are the details, the detailed root memories, the source. Then there's the processing that as it's fed in, your brain-mind connection immediately processes and creates the branch memories. And those branch memories are basically how you're seeing yourself, what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're feeling, the coping mechanisms, the how you kind of all this sort
Would
of
that also
detail.
be the outcome, the perceived outcome?
That perceived outcome, yes. So it's all this is still in your mind head. Then this, very good, perceived outcome. So all of that's built in here. So source, perceived outcome, interpretation. Excellent way you said that. Now this manifests. And it manifests in what you say and do, behaviors, how you're feeling, your emotions, how your body feels, the tension in your body, the anxiety, the heart palpitations, the whatever. And then your perspective. Is this ever going to end? This is terrible. Am I doing this? I'm stuffing up as a parent. It's just like my life's falling apart. Or whatever it may be. I'm just throwing things out there. So that manifests. So you're showing up in what you say, what do you feel, your body, how you're doing it, how you're going about.
Yeah.
So the point here is that this has all happened and it's showing up. And then what you've been doing naturally and instinctively, which we do as humans, all I have done is taken this sequence that I'm creating and showing you and understood it through science, given you the scientific analogy, and we can go deep if you want to, or we can stay at this level of science, whatever you want. And I've created a system that enables us to manage that, to improve our self-regulation, which goes to the question you asked, how do we cope? How do I deal with this? Because you said something tremendously insightful. You said, this is going to happen, not necessarily the exact same incident, but life happens. So how do I live? It's just never going away. So what do you do moment by moment of every day without falling apart because of the day-to-day struggles and the big stuff?
Yeah.
Mind management is the solution. Mind management is what's missing from our current psychiatric approach. Mind management went out the door. It's a very old ancient spiritual concept.
Because almost...
Sorry, I've been speaking all week.
No problem, go ahead. But it's almost like some of the tools have us go back and mend the past, right? Acknowledge it, this happened, forgive, reach out, mend the bridge. But like the compounding effect over and over and over again, and you're saying mind management's going to keep us from getting to that point where we have to go back and mend it again, right? Because that's a cycle of energy.
That's a cycle of energy that can go around like a hamster wheel.
And we get exhausted.
Exhausting. This work is all exhausting. But you're quite right. Those techniques and those things, everything you've said is correct. But if you don't do it in the right place, and the right, you're going to end up on the hamster wheel. And then you're going to feel like you're starting from day one again, or you're starting from the start line again. And that's very demoralizing and frustrating.
And you quit. You're going to stop.
And and you're straight. And then it's increased depression. Then it's pill popping, and then it just gets worse. And then these volcanoes in your head just explode, and life just becomes awful. And and suicide and whatever. I mean, it's going down an extreme road. But so what's missing is how do we manage that? So that's why I come back to the first statement I made. It's okay to be a mess. So it's an acceptance, first of all, which is a kind of that heart, non-conscious, meaning life, deep spiritual stuff. life is going to be a mess and suffering's part of it, and I need to be able to embrace the suffering, which is very much sort of like the Buddhist Eastern kind of, but it's not even that, it's just normal love stuff. It's what we as humans, how we grow, how we develop resilience, etc., etc. So if we have that attitude that it's okay to be a mess, this is going to happen, now how do I deal with this? What does it look like? So what I found from my clinical experience and my research in my own life is that having an understanding of what has gone on in our neurophysiology, what's happening in our psychology, our spiritual level, gives us a bit more control and makes us feel a little bit more empowered and makes us feel okay about being not okay. And then gives us a little bit of hope and helps us to get a level of peace that, well, you know what, I can't change what's happened.
Yeah.
I can't change the fact that my wife, made this decision at 20, in her whatever age she is now, this happened. We can't go back and say, if only I did that, which is what people do. That's what she did. That's her story. And this is the story. So you can't change that. It's happened. What you can change is what it looks like inside of you. So it can either be this crazy volcano that just takes you on the hamster wheel, or I can take the energy out of this thing and reshape it. So we all know why. We know the root of your current situation. We know why you're showing up with the levels of high stress and all that stuff, and anxiety and guilt and concern and fear for your wife, all these things. We all those 4 signals that I spoke, behaviors, emotions, perspectives, and bodies, we can unpack that, and it's very good to unpack those, because the more you actually get those out in a very organized way, the more you become empowered to change the energy. So this is what's happening. As you're talking to me, as you get this out, we could take each of those 4 signals and we could unpack each of those just for you first. And then once you understand that, you can then help your wife unpack it, and then you can help your son unpack it. In other words, you work on yourself, you help your loved ones. You all got to, you can't fix your wife. You have to say, hey, you can do this. And if you go through these steps, you're actually changing this toxic thing that is overwhelming and making us feel guilt. And because her as a mom, I'm telling you, she's got, this thing is filled with guilt, guilt. Why did I do that? Going back, the if onlys, the could have, should have, would have, I'm a terrible mother, it's self-talk, and then it's coming out in a lot of whatever ways. It's so if we know that exists. So it's this big, powerful thing. So what we want to do is weaken this thing. So that we can't change it, it's happened, but we can make it weak, because at the moment it's overpowering. When it's this big and it's unmanaged, it gets fed. Now, whatever you think about the most will grow. So we grow. There's something else we can do. Our messy mind will grow it, our managed mind will make it shrink. And when it shrinks, we can then get to the point where we can actually have the resilience unmasked that's naturally in us, and we can move forward and eventually talk about this and see how we've got through this. How do we do that? Very systematically, our brain does simply what the mind tells it to do. So the messy mind actually likes to be led by the wise mind, or deep spiritual heart level, whatever you want to call it. And so therefore, if we can train ourselves to just step into what's very natural, stand back and observe ourselves, you can actually do this. So let's take your situation, then we'll take it down to your son, so you can have 2 levels.
Okay.
So the first thing is for you to say to yourself, to stand back, literally, almost like we're in these chairs. I often use the example of 2 chairs. You sit in one chair and you say, okay, Ruben, how are you feeling today? And then you get in that chair and you say, what do you feel?
Oh, so this morning alone, stressed out, get up, running late. Isaac was a little late. Had to drop my kid off. Then Z was going to the doctor. Then she was late. Then I forgot my key, so I had to go back home to come here. So stress. And I'm like, I want to be present for Dr. Leaf. I want to make sure I'm prepared. And all these things start unpacking. And then we got work, and I'm going to run out of time. And today's a podcast day, so I can't get to all my emails. And then I got to go pick up Remy again, and it starts all over. And then it's going to be tomorrow.
Huge.
Yeah.
This is huge. Excellent. Well, so let's unpack what you said. So you said there that's tremendous high levels of stress. Now, stress is actually good for us, but if it tips, which it was doing in your case this morning, it's now tipped. So your hypothalamic pituitary axis is producing too much cortisol. Your brain is producing, your immune system of your brain is producing too much anti-inflammatory inflammatory factors. So your homocysteine levels are probably through the roof. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. Your heart's palpitating. You smiled very nicely to us when you came in and looked calm, but you were a ball of nerves. Your stomach was a knot. I don't know. I'm just assuming.
Yeah.
You're very good at managing how you present yourself to the world, but inside you were actually, your heart, I bet, was palpitating like crazy. You had to hold it together because we were your guests, etc., etc. But inside, this was just too much. So all the little incidents that happened were all these extra little things that fed into here, and the cycle could be like and then you pulled yourself together. You actually kind of presented and you shifted into work mode. So what you kind of did was you acknowledged.
Can I pause you for 1 second?
Go.
So there's one thing that I always talk about. I'm also very much the athletic mind. I've been an athlete my whole life. So I also know how to turn it off and turn it on. So before you were coming, I took a breath, I started down regulating, and I got ready, which is the energy you felt me at, so you didn't feel the other energy. And it wasn't that I put on a mask or anything. It's just like, it's game time. I'm an athlete.
Excellent.
Let me go to work. So I have that one tool that I know I've been able to use a lot. So that's what you felt in that moment, and has allowed me to be like, here we are. We're in the zone.
Which is fantastic. And I love that, because when I face things, my work is what gets me calm again. So I can switch, if I need to switch into calm mode, I'll do some research. I'll work on what I'm doing, because it's like the athlete that gets you back in.
Yeah.
So you've gained a skill that is what I would call would be step 5 in the neurocycle. So the system I've developed for mind management is called the neurocycle. Step 5 is an active reach, which is an action that you do that you can fall back on. That you literally wire in as a healthy network in step 5. It's not at the root, but in step 5 of the process, and it's an action you can fall back on. So you have a resilience network built inside of you that looks like this. That's very big. That's healthy and green, and that is something that you trained in yourself. So the training, let's get this one over here for a second. So that root system over here was all the years of you spending time training to be a pro athlete, and all the discipline that took. Every action, every exercise, every time was building in the roots, growing and being interpreted and as how you perceived yourself, and then showing up in the actual practice. So that exercise unmasked your resilience. One of the things that I teach in the neurocycle is there's 2 types of neurocycling. One is to deal with the toxic stuff and literally detox. The other one is to build resilience, optimize your functioning and unmask your resilience. So what you drew on this morning was, without even knowing that you did the neurocycle, I've just given a name to something that humans actually do, but you can be more organized in how you do it, is you drew on something that you actually had built into your brain. And this is what came up. And this is what's also been holding you through this month, is these resilience networks. So as much as we need to detox, we need to focus on these. And what I always say to people and to my patients when I was still practicing, and that I do with myself, is think of multiple times during the day, if something pops in your mind that's great, like a great conversation like this or something, or your athletic training, or just whatever really grabs you, a great moment with your wife or whatever, your child, that cute video you showed us, quickly grab that 30 seconds and think about it and focus, because you then put energy, you grow that bigger. Whatever you think about the most, that is actual energy that goes into the little proteins that these are made of, and increases the power of the aromatic ring literally on that level, and makes it stronger, and then unmasks another layer of resilience. So we need to be, mind management includes not just doing all that hard detoxing, it is also grabbing those moments and making sure that we pour energy into them and grow them stronger and stronger. So just on maybe the easiest way to understand the neurocycle is to look at the healthy, and then we can track it back and carry on doing what we were doing.
Yeah, because then I'm curious, are we skipping steps? Because then that's me performing, that's me being an athlete, that's me showing up. If I'm in here alone, I can totally spiral back to over here. And even my wife said, like, dude, you've shown up stoic. Like, I wouldn't even tell, like, you're in total chaos this entire month. So there's moments of that. But there's still stuff over there. I'm still clearly on that other tree. So we've got the 2 trees. So am I jumping? Am I warping back and forth? And is there some stuff in the middle I need to work on?
Yes, you're moving back and forth. So you've actually, when you do on your athletic training, that you didn't actually skip any steps. You actually just went through the neurocycle really fast. You recognize that you were in a very anxious, stressed state from all those things that you described. You recognize your behaviors, forgetting keys, going back and forth, fluttering, fast movements, whatever. You recognize your perspective. Oh my gosh, this is lousy. This is whatever the perspective was. You recognize the tension in your body. So you did the first step, which was gather awareness of all 4 signals. You did that really fast. You gathered awareness, And you knew that you had to get yourself ready for an interview. So you gathered awareness, then you reflected, okay, I'm feeling like this because of all the things, the pressure, the emails, the wife, the situation. So you quickly reflected. The third step is to write or get what we call the right step. Now that right step you may not have had time to actually write down, but you would also have, it's also visualizing or it's enacting. So the right step is where you genetically write something in your brain. So by physically writing or visualizing or doing an action, you actually create genetic change. You collapse a wave of energy in the brain and you create a genetic change. You grow something that's healthy. So you probably visualize, okay, the studio, a guest, knowing that you've got to interview, you've got to get in that mode. So that was your step 3. You did that without even knowing. Step 4 was, okay, I feel a bit calmer now. I know your recheck is going back and looking at that's the mess, that's the pattern, that's the trigger. I know what's going on. I know why I'm like this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to breathe, get myself back into athletic mode, and I'm going to draw on this thing. Boom, this thing came up. Boom, we walked in the door and you were cool.
Yeah.
See, you actually did the neurocycle, you drew on this, and you went through all those steps. So now we're in this mode to help us cope. So we have to build a lot of this resilience. This is so important because this is what we draw on when we deal with that stuff. So now we go out of here and let's say you do spiral. Let's say your wife phones and she's just really just sad. And, you've got to stay strong for your wife. But now that's, you kind of, there's been a lot of energy given out into a podcast, into getting yourself ready. So that phone call, when you just need to just get your own downtime and just get your own neurophysiology under control, you had to go back into support mode, stoic mode, support mode, which is good for you too, because it'll improve your healing. But maybe you didn't have enough time in between. So then you do this thing quickly, pull on that, help your wife. Then you feel better because you drew on that and you helped your wife. Research shows that when you support someone else in a bad place, you improve your own healing by 68%. But then if you carry on doing that, chronically, which means ongoing, you're going to crash. So we have to have acute, so we have to have acute versions of supporting others, but we have to, acute means in the moment. So phasic versus tonic, acute versus chronic. So in between that, we have to have a little bit of decompression. So then let's say that this does happen, then decompression could look like anything from breathing, meditation. I mean, there's so many ways we can do decompression.
Definitely need more decompression.
I've got an app called the Neurocycle app. All this is in the app. It's literally me giving you therapy. And I have a whole 63-day program where I take you through the neurocycle in cycles of 63 days, because that's how long it takes to actually rewire networks. So to rewire this month, it's going to take 63 days to get this thing to the right size. And then I have decompression exercises in there as well that you can literally just press and go through the decompression. And I have brain prep exercises too. So there's, anyway, and I've got them in the books too, and for kids, got ones for kids too. So now you've done that, now you do a little bit of decompression, whatever that looks like, what works instantaneously to get you in a good space. It's one of my favorite. There's many, but this is one of my favorite. You breathe in for 3, but like your whole gut fills up really deep. And like you almost feel like you hold it a little bit and then like really push it out. And this is something Remy will love, because kids love this because they can make noises, they can blow blueberries, but you force it out for 7 counts. And if you repeat that 10-second pause 6 to 9 times, you'll feel high. You can even feel it after one breath. You'll get a massive amount of oxygen moving to the front of the brain. That stabilizes the imbalance that has occurred in your brain energetically wise. So delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma frequencies, and then the neurochemistry that drives, and the electromagnetics, that all this works together. All of that's got chaotic in the ups and downs that you've gone through. It's got an up and down, up and down, up and down. This helped calm it, whatever. But there was a bit of a tsunami maybe at the end of your wife's conversation. So now that breathing has actually calmed down the neurophysiology. So your HPA axis is more lined up. You've got more oxygen in the front of your brain, so you can be more focused. You've got your gamma is now not a tsunami, it's actually little ripples and in the right places and all kinds of stuff. Great stuff has just happened.
Yeah, but instead of being like all constricted.
Exactly, like a tied up, knotted, you now have got a level, and now you can say, okay, I need to now just sort of work through this. I need to now give myself permission to do a bit of detoxing. And now you can say, okay, let me talk about this last month. I feel it's been, give me some emotions this last month. Give me some emotions.
It's
just
been
emotions,
angry, overwhelming, also grateful. A lot of people have stepped up and helped. So it's like a mixed bag of grateful and ungrateful, right?
That's okay.
Fear
Remember, everything's okay.
and love.
No
It's
judgment.
all of it. You know, it's anxiety and panic and chaos and
Depression, maybe? Panic attacks, maybe?
yeah, a little bit of all of
Extreme.
that.
And that's all
It's
okay.
and it's also like I'm running out of time. I'm always running, so
out of
very
time.
rushed. I'm very rushed these days. It's like I'm
Behavior, okay.
can't keep up time. Can't keep. I feel like I'm falling behind in life.
Okay, so there we go, perspective. So you just did 3 things there. You gave me emotions, you gave me behaviors, always running, you gave me perspective. You feel like you're falling behind. How does it feel in your body?
Doesn't feel good. Stressful. I'm exhausted. Like I'm tired.
Exhausted.
Like I want to sleep way more than normal. And then the last couple nights, I haven't really fallen asleep. But the week before, I actually was falling asleep super early.
And then when you do sleep, maybe not sleeping deeply enough, not getting enough REM
I'm
sleep.
up. And I've been up like an hour and a half earlier than normal. I could get up like 6:30 without the alarm. I've been up at 5 or 4.
And you're sleeping on the edge of your seat because you know you're checking on your wife, you're thinking of your child, your mind's just like...
When she also hasn't been in the bed for a month. She's been on the couch for a month.
She's so sore. So
yeah.
that's also disruptive. So your sleep pattern's gone out, which will also cycle back in. And so that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what you just did,
Okay.
you just pulled into the conscious mind. As we started this conversation, you already did that by the mere fact that you shared your story. So as you did that, you pulled up the whole thought. Now what we're doing is, and the thought's filled with memories, so all the detail of the past month. So this thing's pretty full. You know, it's got a lot of stuff in it. So we pulled it up into the conscious mind. When you're conscious of something, that's when you are empowered to change it. So now when I started asking more specifically, you gave me the 4 signals. You gave me the emotions, you gave me the behavior, you gave me your bodily sensation, and you gave me your perspective. In doing that, you have actually weakened all the protein and chemical bonds in this thing, this thought tree, and even started opening the door to the processing to weaken the root. And so what we've done is we've created a situation where you can remove energy from this, and we can't change what's happened, but we can change what it looks like. So that's what we're in the process of doing. So now we can go into the next step, which is to reflect. So the reflection is, and you see, notice I'm forcing you almost to, from your initial story, which you told me everything kind of mixed up together, I'm now asking you to retell me the story, but I'm unpacking it in layers. Because that now what we're doing is we're directing the neuroplasticity of our brain. We're changing how the brain is actually working. So you're taking control. So instead of that worn pathway that could become that overwhelm, we're now going to start taking that worn pathway, and we're going to create a branch on the side that's a much nicer one. Walk through beautiful flowers, for want of a, all your paintings on this side, and all the nice stuff's on this side. We're going to start getting into that direction. That, just to give you analogies. The unpacking in the sequence does that. If you do it all together, you'll bring it up. It's like taking a plane taking off. But if you don't go through the sequence, the plane will crash. You've got to fly the plane, you've got to land the plane. Let the plane take off again, we fly it, we land it. And you do this constantly over a period of time. So you won't solve it in today's podcast, sorry, but you can if you carry on with this for the next 63 days. You do your own, your wife does one, you do one together, you do one with Remy. You're going to find yourselves incredibly different in a month's time. Still cry, still pain, and that's what I want to really say. The depression, the anxiety, every emotion you have, none of those are bad. All of those are messengers telling you information from the unconscious who's got your back, pushing through the portal of the subconscious into your conscious mind. Because the way our mind-brain-body connection is designed, our psychoneurobiology, is we need to unpack each of those signals, sequentially go through these steps in order to weaken the network so we can make a new pathway, on the side, if that makes sense. Okay, so the next step is to reflect. So now we take each very sequentially. Okay, those emotions, frustration. Okay, let's unpack why frustration. We don't have to do all of them. We can just do one, whichever one you want. Do you want frustration?
Sure.
Okay, so let's unpack why frustration.
Lack of
You've already
control.
said it.
Lack of control, running out of time, not keeping up.
Good, excellent.
Also the stress of like, I'm carrying the family's weight on me, right? My wife
can't really
is on the couch. So like,
you're doing everything. You're Mr. Mom, you're Mr. Dad, you're Mr. Everything. Mr. Support, Mr. Therapist, Mr. Cook, Mr. Everything. So there's, okay, excellent. So that's enough. You don't have to do too much. Now, what we would be great if we had some paper and you could start writing this down. And the way you write is get yourself a journal. I'm sure you have. Don't journal though. Just open up, put the date down, do a circle in the middle, put down a date, and then just draw a line like a tree and just write whatever in a bubble or on the line and just jump all over. Put this thought there, this there, that there, this there, all over. Use different colors if you want. Try not write in lines. Just write like in little bubbles, little clouds, little box, and try and have everything connected. Try not make things float. So if you write a sentence, put it in a bubble or a cloud or a box or a shape. So
is that to avoid our normal constraints of what we're trying, like keep it out of the formula or something?
Yes, to keep it out of the formula. It also forces a different kind of activity response in the brain that helps you get into your heart. So it digs down deep. So as a therapist, if I was working with someone who had suppressed trauma, this would be a very key point to be able to start pulling the detail of the trauma up in a very organized way so it's not overwhelming. Okay, so it's this step is mind-blowing because it shows it's the hardest and it's the deepest, and it really gets you into places. Like, for example, when I had work with people that had the behavior symptoms of schizophrenia, which is not a disease, it's a very extreme mind response to situations, but the behaviors are life-threatening sometimes and so on, and that very often has the split personality. This third step of writing, and it's called metacogging. That's the name that I've called it, and for kids you call it bubble cogs because you just do bubbles with lots of pictures and things. You can see as someone is I would use big whiteboards. I'd have big boards, and then they would just write, and they would be writing and talking, and I'm guiding with questions and the things, whatever's coming out of their head, and then they would go to the other side, and suddenly they're still talking as though it's the same person, but now we see a totally different person. So we'd be able to capture the shifts that happened, and then that shift to another personality, and there'd be all the reasons. We'd be able to look at that and say, hey, look there, that's that personality, which is coming from that trauma, and you could actually map it for a person and see. So it pulls from the non-conscious, because your non-conscious is a forest, a massive, massive forest. And you're going to love this. Down the middle, and this is an analogy I use that just works really well because it is like a forest. Through the middle of the forest is the core of your you, and that's this perfect forest, and it's the love forest. There's nothing wrong. It's just the most exquisite, perfect, whatever you imagine to be a perfect forest. That's your driving force. That is your wired for love nature. That is what neurobiologists have shown, that there's not a single protein, there's not a single subatomic particle that forms into proteins, that forms into the different structures of the cell, organs, systems, etc., of the entire brain and body that are wired to cripple you. They're wired for your survival. So when we have problems or genetic things that come through, they threaten our survival, and that's why our body tries to fight those. So our core design is one of love, wired for love. And in our mind, it's a forest, and it's this perfect forest. And that's the wise mind. That's what you want to tap into. But that takes discipline. It takes standing back and doing what we're doing now and observing, etc. So long story short, around this are green trees, huge forests around the middle, and that's all our life experiences, all the messiness of life and the nice things. And in between, there's these clusters of these dark trees. Some are bigger than others, etc., etc. So what we're essentially doing is we are kind of flying over this forest, and we're looking for the ones that are the most prominent and dominant and impacting our behavior. At the moment, what you've just gone through would be the most relevant one. But underlying that, I'm hearing another one that is associated. So I'm seeing an associated one, and that's your time pressure. So I think this is kind of you're a very high achiever, and you know there's and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but you put an incredible amount of pressure on yourself to achieve. So there could be maybe some work you could do to just give yourself a break. Now, you may have to do a separate 63-day cycle, which is kind of what I'd recommend for you, to work out why do you have put so much pressure to achieve on yourself. Because at the cry of your heart is, hey, I just kind of want to breathe. I feel like I'm not breathing. I want to just enjoy my kid and enjoy my wife and enjoy what I do and this fun stuff. And, and yet you're so driven. And that's okay to be driven. There's nothing wrong with being driven, but I think you've gone off balance, and there's a reason. So you may want to do some work to find the reason and then just reconstruct it. So doing the neurocycle does all this. So when you get to the right step, you write that down. If you wrote that down, we've now started weakening. So now the recheck is to look at what you've written and say, okay, this is all valid. I see all of this. Oh, hang on, there's something popping up here. Oh, that stimulates that. What's the pattern? What's the trigger? And you know it already, but just seeing it in paper, on paper, going through this phase, you've weakened this. Every bit of writing you do in the right step, which is step 3, every bit of recheck, all of these are starting to shrink. There's a conservation of energy principle that you grew up at. You learned this at school. No energy's lost. It's transferred. So what I'm doing, what you're doing through this process of gather awareness, reflect, write, active recheck, which is the fourth step, where you look at what you've written and try and make sense, add color, more pictures, whatever. Look for patterns. This has happened. What can I do? It's very progressive. It's the reconceptualization. It's like, this is everything, but now what can I do? How can I solve this? Do I need to see a therapist? Do I need to talk to my best friend? Do I need to sit down and take stock and look at how I'm doing my business? Or do I need to, phone that buddy of mine who's just so good at seeing other perspectives? Or do I need to call my mom? What is it? What can I do to just help me get perspective? Or can I just draw on my athletic training and apply those principles? When you're just looking at it very objectively, and you could be shifting chairs through this, you could be messy mind, wise mind, messy mind, wise mind. You are then reshaping. This thing's shrinking. And I've started healing the roots. I tell the kids, and you'll see in the book, you're putting plant food on, because that's the rotten part here. Now, we can't pull the tree out. We can't wipe it out. We can't drug it away. We can't technique it away. We can't breathe it away. We can't meditate it away.
Yeah.
We have to fix the roots. And part of fixing the roots is I can't change what happened this last month. I can't change the fact that my wife's had surgery. I can't change the fact that my son hasn't been able to be held by my wife for a month. I can't change the fact that I'm Mr. Mom and Mr. Everything. But I can change what it looks like so that I don't feel so overwhelmed. And so now I'm going through the steps, I'm doing that. So the recheck is taking me down to that point. So then I say, okay, I've done enough for today. You do 15 to 45 minutes max. Otherwise, your brain and mind get really tired. They're like your cell phone. They're going to need recharging. Your non-conscious mind never gets tired. It's brilliant, never stops, operates at speeds of 10 to the 27, which is inconceivable to even imagine, never gets tired. So you have to learn to let your brain and conscious mind rest. So you stop with an active reach. And that active reach could be drawing on this. It could be a visualization. It could be a statement saying, hey, this is okay. It's okay to be a mess. Maybe that's your active reach for today. It's okay to be a mess. I have a plan for mind management. And maybe a picture, maybe one of your pieces of art or whatever you're seeing as I'm talking, because I think you're already seeing art out of this. I want to see your art coming out of this or something.
I am, and I want to show you a self-portrait I did a couple of years ago.
I can't wait to see that.
But I'm also thinking, what you're saying is like 15 to 45 minutes, and the first thing that popped in mind is this question that I have is like, but how do I know if it's 15 or 45? How do I know if I did it right? How do I know if it's enough? How do I know if it's landing? Because especially high achievers or people, entrepreneurial or creatives, like that's going to be the question. When do I stop? Do I just stop at 45? Because like just getting to 45 could also be like, I can't spend 45 minutes on this right now.
Do 10, do 15. Put your stopwatch on for 5 minutes and see how far you get, and give yourself a minute on each step. That's an excellent exercise. So 5 minutes or 15 minutes, 3 minutes on each step, and literally set your stopwatch to go off every 3 minutes. So that it's very stilted the first few days while you're doing that, but you get yourself in a rhythm. You think, oh no, actually I think I like the 15 minutes. No, I like 20. No, I like 5. Or today I'm doing 5, tomorrow I'm doing 15. So there's no wrong way of doing it. You just follow the sequence of the 5 steps. Whatever you do is doing good. That's the beauty of it. I've done the science behind it, so great things are happening in your brain. Just traversing through those steps, moving through those steps is doing great stuff. So you've got to reassure yourself, because you're looking for what's the end product, what's the goal. Just the mere fact that that's why I told you this about the tree. This is happening in your brain. You're weakening this thing. So maybe get a visual in your mind of, hey, I'm doing this work. And you know what? You will feel worse before you get better. And you know that. Your wife saw that she's going to be healed and she'll be better. She had to be cut up, go through pain to be healed. So that's the same principle. So we in a...
So the act itself is the goal. Think of it that way. Goal.
Beautiful. And it's painful. And it's okay. And it gets worse before it gets better, which is very normal. It's the surgery principle. And it really gets bad around 21 days. You're going to have ups and downs through that. But 21 days, and it may not be too bad, but generally the depression, anxiety, frustration may increase even more, because that's when you'll get angry or something and say, hey, I'm so angry for time lost. I'm so angry for the things I didn't do that I should have done. I'm so angry for the time my child lost out on some informative moment. Have I discarded him for life? Get it all out. Don't keep it in. Otherwise it's a volcano. But it's different to say, okay, I'm acknowledging the fact that I didn't do that. I can make peace with it. That's what's happening down when we get to the root. Yes, you did lose time. Yes, it did impact your child. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It did. He is traumatized. But it's okay, because you know what? You can change the trauma. You can change the tree. You can sit with your child. You can show him Brainy. And you can I have what I recommend people do with kids, is you get, even for adults, find a space in your home. I'm sure there's a space that you all love. Let your child find it. So where's your best place in the house? Get a cute little cushion or something. Let him paint it. I'm sure you can, something, whatever. Put toys there. Get a toy box. Put Brainy there. We're going to give you a Brainy. Get shoe boxes or bags, your cute bags that you've got, and let your son and you and your wife cut up pictures. Cut out pictures of all kinds of emotions, adults and children, behaviors, adults and children, actions, bodily sensations. Someone's got a sore stomach, whatever. There's lots of examples in the book too. And we have a coloring book. You could color that in and cut those out. And then perspectives. Perspectives is the hardest thing to teach a child. So then I recommend you get 2 pairs of sunglasses. An old broken pair, they can be cheap things, and then maybe one that's really cute that your son would like, and put that in the 4th box. And that's a special corner. It's a safe place. It is where there's no judgment, where you can be as messy as you want, where you can say what you want. Whoever sits there is saying that I need space, I need someone to come and just be with me and share with me. And when your little boy's maybe had something going on at school, there's a whole thing at home, and he doesn't know how to verbalize it, and maybe it's coming out in a tantrum or frustration or a biting, whatever, not sleeping, bedwetting, whatever the case may be, if he's potty trained, then you can teach him, let's go to that corner. I see Brainy is a bit sad today, or whatever toy he loves. And a child of that age is really great. They love to act out. And if you make Brainy do what you see your child do, then it makes him feel safer. They can then, Brainy's doing it, not me. What we want to do is validate the experience and tell them, hey, listen, even though you threw your toys and you screamed and you did this and this, I still love you. I know that's not you. I know that you are inside that's not who you are, but I see something's going on. Let's go play with Brainy. Let's go to our whatever you want to call it, neurocycle corner. Kids can say that word. Kids, we mustn't downplay their intelligence. They love a fancy word. They love the brain. It can be your brain corner, whatever you want to call it, and let them go there and say, okay, and then you can model. You can, the first time round or each time, I'm daddy and I felt frustrated today. Very limited language, obviously. Tell him your emotions. I felt like this, and I got a sore tummy, and I was sad, and I shouted, or whatever, and then you can say, and I did that because I felt worried about mommy, and then you can. What's great is if it's a blackboard that you can write on, pick up the colored chalk, and you can draw a picture of a sad face, and that's how you felt, and you can write the word sad for mommy, and draw a picture of mommy, and then you just do it quite quickly, and then you can say, okay, but you know what, we're going to go and make mommy some tea now, and go give her a kiss. And then she'll feel better and I feel better, and then you go do it. You've done the 5 steps in 5 seconds, and he's participated, and you can go do all that and say, okay, now let's talk about you. Do you want to tell me what Brainy's doing? Because I see that you didn't sleep well last night, and you seem to have bad dreams. You're having some nightmares, and maybe you feel sad, and so you can prompt. And do you want to show me what Brainy's doing? I see Brainy also didn't sleep well. Can you see what I'm saying? And then you model. But I know you do this, or I know that this is what parents do. What I'm saying is you being very deliberate and intentional. Like you go to the gym deliberately, intentionally. We all know we must do exercises and move our arms, but you go to the gym, you go to that machine, you do that specific. That's what we're doing now. We have created the safe space. We've got a mind management system that is doing this great stuff in the brain, and you're teaching your child from 2 that it's okay, mommy and daddy freak out and get upset. It's not the end of the world. That's normal human behavior. I can do that too, but I don't stay like that. Mommy and daddy don't stay like that. They tell me and they show me that they're better. That's the message you're building in. That's the resilience you're wiring into that child. Same thing with the happy stuff. Do the happy stuff. Go to the happy corner. Oh, you played such a nice game with your friend today, and I saw you were having so much fun. Let's talk about that, and let's play with Brainy. Let's show me with Brainy. So you then build these. So you use the corner to deal with the sad stuff and the happy stuff. And that becomes a very deliberate, intentional place in the environment. The chalkboard thing is brilliant because, paint a one wall with a white or black that they can write on, because the child will then automatically go to that and do things. You can get chalk, big, thick chalk, and you can draw big circles on the ground. Draw a circle in the middle, you've got a circle here, and then imagine circles coming out of that, and toys, boxes, whatever, and you can tell your child, let's do a neurocycle, let's talk about let's do all this stuff. 4 circles coming out, so we go and stand in the circle where I feel sad, I feel mad, I feel cross, whatever. And then go to the next one. What am I doing? I'm shouting at mommy. Go to the next one. And if they don't know, you demonstrate with brainy so they don't feel threatened. You see what I'm saying?
No, this is so fascinating because when I was a kid, we didn't do this, right? If mommy's stressed out or whatever, it's like, we have no idea what's happening.
And you felt bad. You felt that it was your fault.
And as a kid, we used to share all the time. And it's like, I was deemed an oversharer. So guess what I did? I became a zero sharer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Right? So it's like, and it wasn't a bad thing. It's just like, I would go say, he's like, you don't say the family stuff outside. I'm like,
yeah.
But that was how I was expressing myself at the time. Then I was told, don't do that. And culturally, again, it wasn't intentionally a bad thing to be told that, but that's what happened. But sitting here and seeing this, like, I'll tell him, like, no, daddy's tired or this or that. And when he's having a tantrum, I said, it's okay, buddy. I understand. You're not understanding what's happening right now. Let's try to walk through this. But the other steps you just told me, because there's a point where, like,
what do I do now?
We're both looking at him throwing his little tantrum, like, okay, this is what a 2-year-old does. Totally normal. We're not doing anything wrong. But like, how do we have him understand it now? Because yes, he'll snap out of it and then boop, moves on his merry way. But I'm like, we don't want to ignore that. Like, what is that?
What is it? Yeah.
Exactly.
And how do you deal with a tantrum? And how do you deal? Do you discipline? Do you send them in the corner? So that's first. I'm glad you brought up the tantrum thing, because the worst thing we can do is isolate them. If you put them in a room or say that, obviously, if they're doing something like throwing things around, there's certain behaviors. You just got to say to them, okay, we can't do that, and stop the throwing, or if it's hurting himself or hurting others, you stop the physical behavior by holding them tight, bringing them into your space, that physical concept. It's okay, come here, hold them, bring them into your space.
So I try to hold him, and when he lets me hold him, I'll hold him, squeeze him, like make him feel safe. But then he's just like, when he doesn't want it, then I'm like, okay, let me just sit next to you.
It's fine.
I'm here, and I'll be like close. I'll put my hands close,
Very
and then
good.
I'll try, and then if eventually he lets me pat him on the back, or I just want him to know that we're acknowledging him.
That's excellent.
But then
what's next? So you're doing that brilliantly. So this is where you could go. If you almost like train him to go to that corner. If it's in the house, or that not corner, that beautiful area, that's beautiful.
The safe space.
The safe space. The safe space. Go there and even maybe go hand him the brainy, because kids love this, or whatever toys. It doesn't have to be the brainy. It's just that we've tried to create a relatable object, because you can see the pictures in the book, they can color it in.
And they like routine.
They like routine, and you've created a point of contact that's not something, it's something that someone else, that Dr. Caroline, she told me I'm silly to do it, so you can blame me, not her, not you, this is going to help you. The kids respond to that. They respond to, I would teach 2-year-olds about the brain. I would show them the brain. Take your cute brain home. Put that in the corner. Put one of those. Let him paint one. And so so in terms of the tantrum thing, you want to try and give him it. Both of those are excellent. Giving him something in his hands, very important. They're tactile. So that's where you could give a squishy ball or a toy, or maybe if there's some sensation that he likes, like a silk blanket or something, so that he can do something with, because that transfers energy. Because remember, this energy is building like a volcano, and he's just exploding and doesn't know how to express that energy, so it comes out in behavior. So what we want to do is let the energy come out, but kind of redirect the energy into a more healthy way. So in that state, either you're hugging or you give him something to touch. And then they don't want to breathe at that stage, but you could play a breathing game. You could, as he calms down more, you could try and do some brain, what I call the brain preparation. Then you can go into, and I've actually got, by the way, in our Neurocycle app, we've got a parent add-on that we are about to launch soon along with the book, and there is one for how to deal with tantrums. So you literally can press play and you can follow the steps. So it's pretty helpful. But the essence of it is that then you're going to go through the 5 steps. So you're going to say, okay, you're feeling mad. You're feeling bad. Give them the words. I see that you want to throw your toy, and acknowledge the behavior. I see that your tummy's sore, maybe. What's sore? Can you show me where you're sore because you're so mad? They love doing that, and they'll touch it, whatever. Touch their tummy. Yes, there we go. You see, he already does it. And that's good. Well done. Thanks for sharing that with me. It's all that kind of stuff.
Where they look down, he's like,
there you go. Yeah. There you go. So that's he's telling you, his body, and then perspective. Tell him to choose a pair of glasses, and you'll put the broken ones on, and maybe you find a whole bunch of ones that are funny faces, and so you make it. So he's looking at life in a certain way, and then once you've done that, that may be all you need to do to break the tantrum, and for him to start talking to you.
Start giggling.
Giggling and playing, and then you can say, okay, show me why Brainy threw that toy, why Brainy got so mad, and then let him go into the sort of third step, which is the enacting and the play. So the reflect step is kind of where you've got that, you've identified each of those. Then you're going to kind of say, I see that, maybe something's making you mad. Can you show me? So in the reflect and the right step, you're going to start enacting with a child of 2. There's going to be some demonstration, maybe drawing pictures, or you could tell them to go to the box. And you keep adding pictures to the box. And you could say, do you want to choose one of the pictures to show me how you feel? And make sure you have pictures of kids throwing tantrums. And maybe of kids being teased and of mommies being sick and all these things. And let him show you. And so that's that third step. And then the fourth step, okay, I understand. So let's now work out I understand that's making you sad. I would be sad too. I feel sad too. But maybe instead of throwing your toys or screaming or stamping your foot, maybe we can have some a soft like a corner of like balls, something that's safe that you can throw, have an anger wall or something that he can go and throw the balls. Or you could do the kintsugi principle, which is things that break. So you could take in a safe space, say, okay, let's go and break this plate in this area in a bucket so it doesn't hurt him, and take break it, and then pick up the pieces, do this as an activity with him and rebuild the plate and say, okay, this is how you felt. And it's still beautiful, but all the little parts you put together are the anger or the simple words, you felt mad. Now we fixed the mad. Now you've got something beautiful. I've got a lot of examples like that in there. Now that would take quite long to do all of that. So you may just do the first step, and you may find you do the third step another time. But doing the actual plate, kintsugi plate, for example, or whatever, could be, it's step 5. It's the active reach. It's an action. That could be a whole activity later in the day or done another day. I don't expect you to spend 5 hours. No kid's going to go through that. I'd give a whole thing on timing. But it's very easy to get them into the space where you can get them to identify those emotions, enact it, and then give them some kind of, okay, let's rather do this instead of that, giving them some, and then practicing that. So instead of, doing the plate, which takes long, it could just be, how about we stand up and jump up and down? Maybe get one of those little small trampolines and let's go jump on the trampoline, up and down. Let's get this cross energy out of us, and then that's an active reach. You can do all of that in under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Isaac, sorry.
No problem.
That might be our next. Can you?
Was that open for you?
Huh? No, we have someone else coming.
Yeah, Maxie can open
So
for you.
Isaac can go outside and we'll continue. Just tell her we're running a smidgy behind.
Okay.
It's Angela. And because it's not live, we're still good. So that makes a lot of sense. But I have a question, because sometimes that tantrum could be from another time of the day, right? Doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
instantly. It could just be that it randomly hit him. And
Triggers could be old triggers, accumulated triggers, and new triggers.
And can also, when we're sharing, because I say it's okay, I'd feel that way, I say some of those things, but do we ever bring in, when you're feeling that way, it makes me feel this way also?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's in the recheck. All of that why stuff is in the recheck. So what we're doing is, with the gather, we are just identifying very specifically those 4 signals, which is how you pull the tree up and weaken it. And then the reflecting is getting to a level of, why are we doing this? Let's analyze each one of those things. And it's done kind of all together as a child. I mean, you do the steps sequentially, but it's not as long-winded as an adult, obviously. Your right step is a little more action or drawing kind of thing. Your recheck, and that pulls up more stuff. Then our recheck is to look at those things and to say exactly what you said, to bring in the why statements, the reconceptualizing, the how can we do this, the reconstruction. What is a better way of doing this, or seeing this, or understanding this? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what your step 4. You first want to get it up, get a level of, why am I doing this? So that, your child doesn't just, okay, let me say it this way. There's a lot of programs in schools and books that you can find that say, let's talk about our emotions. Great stuff. But I search high and low to find books that actually go further than just letting the plane take off. So think of just naming your emotions as the plane takes off. If we don't do something, that plane will crash. So that you're just going to create a well-worn pathway, and it's going to become a negative cycle. So it's really important that we don't just name the emotion, but we name the behavior that goes with the emotion and the body sensation and the perspective, and that we do a little bit of why are these showing up in my life, each one, and then get it all down, and then wisdom comes in. The wisdom is the perspective, the reflection, the word you said. What did you say in that question? You actually said a really good phrase. Trying to recall the phrase as you asked me that question is, where do we do the sort of giving them the guidance for moving forward? I don't know what the words were. You just used great words.
We'll find it later.
Yeah, we'll find it later.
When we watch it again.
But so the recheck is where you're doing that.
Yeah.
It's where you really are reconceptualizing, looking at this. This has happened. It's a reality. What can I do to find a level of peace? So as you keep doing that over the 63 days, I don't know, are we filming? Do you want to carry on? Are we still filming?
Yeah.
Explain this? Okay. All the energy as I'm going through each step is going out. And each day I'm doing it, it's going out. So if you're doing a long-term thing, which is more for what you're going to be doing for adults, and you do it for kids, but I'll tell you the circumstance now. This is getting smaller and smaller, weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And as it's getting smaller, it's growing another whole tree trunk and branch, and eventually this is the main thing, and this is just a teeny little section in there. It's become one little wire. I've reconceptualized. So I remember how I functioned or what happened or whatever, but it's no longer controlling me. I'm controlling it. So that's what's happening there.
Yeah, because the uncontrollable, I mean, if we look at sci-fi movies where you see those abandoned, abolished deserts. Actually, my in-laws have a house in Borrego Springs, and we call it Lion King, that elephant forest.
Oh, wow.
That's
yes.
what that looks like. So this uncontrollable weed of a tree we can't control because it's controlling us, right? That's the irrationality, the impatience, the emotional reaction.
It's producing the signals. All those things are the signals that it's producing.
And then on this side, it's like, grass is greener where you water it. So let's water this side to be able to, I always say, like, how can I practice responding versus reacting?
That's what it will lead to. That's where, but you can't just technique it out of you, or breathe it out of you, or meditate. You actually have to deconstruct. And that's what we're doing here. And you can't deconstruct unless you've actually weakened. So that's what the gathering is doing. And so the steps are sequentially taking you through the process. Because we all know these concepts are not unfamiliar. Yeah. But if you don't do them in the right sequence, and you don't do all of them, you're going to, you're not
crash and burn.
Exactly. So with a child, you're going to deal with a lot of in-the-moment stuff. But you do have children that have been abused. So there's traumas that have built up over time. And I give an example in the book of a little boy who was traumatized at as young as 2 and 3 months by the biological mother, raped literally by the mother and boyfriends, and physically abused and whatever. Anyway, landed up fortunately back with a biological father and new mom. And long story short is they got him at about 3 when they managed to actually get him back. Didn't realize this was happening. But then all the behaviors came out that of the abuse and the terrible trauma. And they went through years of hell of trying to manage very, very, very severe behavioral symptoms.
Yeah.
And had every diagnosis under the sun, from autism to schizophrenia to pediatric bipolar to you name it, under the current awful system that labels and locks kids in. They were medicated. They tried everything. It's a long story, and it's all in the book there. But essentially, the nutshell was that the mom, in desperation, she just by chance found the system that I developed, the neurocycle. Didn't even have the kids' book out, and did the neurocycle for herself just because she was.
That's amazing.
And the son noticed. It was her stepson noticed the difference in the mom. The kid was 8 at this stage. They'd had 5 years of hell, and she was falling apart. And he saw her doing it, saw her change. See, kids are very smart. And he said, I want to do the neurocycle too. So she just did her best to adapt it. And this kid within 4 days was sleeping. He'd never slept through a night. Their whole life was dominated by trying to get this child. They couldn't go out for dinner. They couldn't go out past 5 o'clock in the evening because it took 2 to 3 hours just to calm him down enough to go to sleep because he was so terrified.
Wow.
So that's extreme. So that didn't go away in one neurocycle. They worked consistently for 63 days and and then did multiple cycles. They're still doing cycles as things are coming up. And
the beautiful moment is, we judge ourselves in thinking. I remember when I was depressed, finding my way to artistry, I would judge myself like, why am I depressed? I live LA, I have no baggage, I'm successful. Like, shame on you for being depressed. Like,
self-shame.
We start judging ours for not being so traumatic as a rape or murder or anything like that. But it's like, all trauma is trauma. We don't have to put weight on one's worse than the other, it's still
your
the
experience.
impact.
Yeah, the impact is there, and you have the right. You have to give yourself permission to actually recognize the impact and work through the impact, because it was real for you. And you're not. It's almost like we've had this kind of, I don't know where it's come from in our culture, but we have got this sort of thinking. Actually, I think I do know where it's come from. That if I didn't go through such a bad thing, then I should be fine.
Yeah.
And it's guilt for even thinking that I should spend time working on myself. But it's the oxygen mask principle. If you don't sort yourself out, you can't help anyone else. You can't help your child without helping yourself. That's why I say, be honest. Tell your child how you feel. Do a neurocycle, model it. They'll do what you do. So, and it's unfortunate that that's a zeitgeist. And you know what? The other point is that 40, 50, 60 years ago, we changed how we looked at mental health. And that change was for the worse. And we now are suffering with the worst mental health crisis with, suicide and children. And if you look at that, it's not that there's some weird virus going around that's causing mental health issues. Yes, we've had COVID, and COVID did definitely add to it. But it's not that there's something that are suddenly, like, I don't know what they think it is, but it's literally the way it's been managed for the last 50, 60 years has resulted in the crisis. So it's not that there's a weird virus making us more crazy. Mental health has always been an issue, but if you shift away from looking at the whole human and love and holistically, and the story of love is listening to your story is love.
Yeah.
Me just saying, oh, you're depressed. Okay, 15 minutes later, here, let me give you a medication. You have bipolar. And forget about the fact that you've just gone through what you've gone through. That's not love. That's not healthy. But that's how we've become, a society of mechanistic mental health.
The business of it.
It's a business. And we see the results. We see 50, 60 years later, people are dying 8 to 25 years younger from preventable lifestyle diseases.
Yeah.
Because if you keep that toxicity inside of you and you never manage it and you keep suppressing it, your body's breaking down right down to the level of your telomeres.
And I believe that's why we're getting more cancer and sicker and more in need of other things. And
I show that with my research. I actually show that with my research, and I'm one of many thousands of researchers that have shown that chronic stress leads to illness.
Yeah.
So chronic unmanaged stress leads to illness, not chronic stress. Acute stress we can deal with. It won't kill you.
It's part of evolution.
Stress, it's part of evolution. It's part of developing that psychological immunity. But unmanaged stress will, over time, wear down. And I showed in like 9-week blocks of time in our clinical trials that in 9-week blocks of time, if in a control group that didn't have any treatment and the control group that had the neurocycle, we saw, for example, telomeres, which is telomeres are the ends of chromosomes. They tell you about your biological health. And they respond to your mind, because everything does. So if you manage your mind, what we showed was in the treatment group that people started with very weak telomeres. If you have very weak telomeres from unmanaged mind, depression, anxiety, all the stories of life, etc., you're going to have very weak cells. Cells make your organs, make your systems, make your body. A weak cell is a vulnerable cell. A vulnerable cell means any kind of disease can hit you wherever there's a genetic liability. So that's why we say chronic unmanaged stress increases your chance of vulnerability to disease by 35 to 98%.
Yeah.
So we showed in 9 weeks of mind management, people gaining up to 35 years of biological health.
That's amazing.
Insane. And homocysteine levels, cortisol levels. So in other words, the biology will follow the psychology, neurobiology.
And add a wellness routine, a physical wellness, eating routine.
That's all your active reaches. Yeah. That's the you've got to have those. But people are using those, Ruben, to fix the mental health.
Yeah.
And it is helping. Exercise does help your mental health. There's a lot of studies and a healthy, eating in a way that works for you and so on. But it's not enough.
Yeah.
You have to also have mind management, because the research shows good exercise routine, good eating routine, whatever. If you're not managing your mind, you'll lose between 80 and 96% of that benefit immediately. So you're doing a workout, but if you're not managing your mind, you're losing up to 96% of the benefit. I mean, that's profound.
No, that's huge. That's almost like, why bother?
Exactly. Well, exactly. And we do need to bother because you've got to keep, but you can't biohack your way with a technique or a tool or a thing on your head, or there's so many little gadgets that you can use. Those will not fix. They will simply be, they're like vitamins.
Yeah.
They're like, give you a boost, but they don't fix the problem.
Yeah. No, well said. That's an astounding fact. But this has been beautiful. This is amazing. I can't wait to read the book and start practicing this and just share this with my wife. It's been very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing. And we are to the final question, though.
Absolutely. Go for it.
There's no right answer. Your answer is going to be beautiful. And the question is, Dr. Leaf, how do you define living a life through love?
Beautiful question. I would talk about working on your relationship with yourself. If you work on your relationship with yourself, you're immediately going to increase how you're going to see yourself differently, and it's naturally going to activate the love that's inside of you to others. So self-love leads to loving others. Self-hatred, whatever you think about yourself is going to be reflected in how you relate to others. You can only really love properly when you love yourself.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Perfect answer. Where can everybody find you?
Webpage is drleaf.com. My social media is Dr. Caroline Leaf, and we have a podcast, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. So
amazing.
On TikTok, I'm on all the social media platforms. So.
Yeah, no, I actually wish I can take a nice 45 minutes and just take all of this in, but I'll get to hear it again soon. Thank you again so much. We will have everything linked up. Make sure everyone sees all this beautiful information, especially if you're an upcoming parent, right? Or even remember, you've got that inner child in yourself. Like, how do we start dealing with ourselves to move forward? Because it's scary. We got pregnant and we're like, are we going to mess up our kid? Like, these are questions people have.
Unfortunately, yes, you are, but it's okay. You'll fix it too.
Exactly. And we have the tools to fix it. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. You're a great interview. And thank you for being so vulnerable and open. It was really great the way you shared.
You're welcome. Happy to be a guinea pig.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Live Through Love. If you love this episode, you'll love this episode.